So now let's start with the implementation of a graph. So hope you already know what is a graph, right? So a graph is nothing but it is a non-linear data structure. So speaking about graph, the first point to be spoken about is it is a non-linear data structure, right? So and what are the real-time applications of a graph? So graph is actually used in maps and Google search engine. And even if you want to say some more real-time example, you can say something like cluster analysis, and even I can say like handwriting recognition, and so on. So even whatever portrait images we are taking through our mobile phone camera, so it is actually, or you can also say it is purely implemented by using graph algorithm, right? So it actually has a node points, and those node points will be connected as a edges. Say for example, if I am detecting a human face, right? So if you are trying to detect a human face, so eyes will be detected at first, so followed by that eyes will detect that nose point. So everything will be connected as some edges, right? So each and everything will be connected, and at last it will form as a graph. So even we have that face unlock feature in our mobile phone. So face unlock actually works just in a simple way, just by connecting all the node points and verifying with the already stored value. So if those two graphs are a perfect matching one, it will unlock our mobile phone. So it means that we are indirectly using graph algorithm. So now let's quickly start with graph. So the first point to be remembered about is it is a non-linear data structure, and applications of graph are like it is used in maps, Google search, cluster analysis, etc. And followed by which we also can say something like a graph is nothing but it is a connected vertices by edges, right? So we can also say something like a connected vertices by using edges is called as a graph. So a graph will have v vertices and it will have e number of edges. So for example, let's construct a simple graph. So let me just so take this example. So we have exactly 4 vertices in a graph. So let it be v1, v2, v3, and at last v4, and it will be connected by some edges, right? So edges can be either weighted with edges, or else it can be non-weighted edges also. So this is what the basic thing which we need to know about a graph. So a graph is a non-linear data structure, and uses of graph, then connected vertices by using edges is nothing but it is a graph, right? So and still we have a lot of types of graph. For example, the first type is nothing but null graph. So let me write it over here. So first example is going to be a null graph. A null graph is nothing but if I have many vertices, but none of those vertices are getting connected, right? So none of those edges are getting vertices are getting connected by any of the edges, it constitutes a null graph, right? So followed by which we also have something called as a trivial graph, right? So what exactly is a trivial graph? So first we have seen something about what is a null graph, and now let's learn something about a trivial graph. So trivial graph is nothing but a graph which has exactly only one edge or one vertices, right? So other than this we won't have any other edges in our graph. So a graph with just only one point is called as a trivial graph. So followed by this we have something called as a directed graph. So a directed graph is nothing but a graph which is connected with the edge where the direction is also getting marked, right? So here we have a graph, and here it is actually in a directed way, and there is an opposite one for this. So that is nothing but undirected graph, right? So undirected graph. So undirected graph is nothing but you can say this is an undirected graph, right? So the one which we have drawn already is said to be an undirected graph because so in this edge I didn't mention about any direction. So even you can say this is a bidirectional graph, right? So it is a bidirectional graph since there is no such directed edges marked. So it means that this graph is a pure example for an undirected graph. So followed by this, I can say something as simple graph, right? So a simple graph is nothing but it won't have any parallel edges, or even you can say there won't be any self loop. For example, if I have any self loop from same vertex to the same vertex again, it is called as a cyclic graph, or even you can say it is not a simple graph. But when it comes with purely a simple graph, it should not have any self loops in that graph, right? So that is why the simple graphs, like if we don't have any self loop, that is called as a simple graph. Just do remember this. And next one is like connected graph. So next type of graph is nothing but a connected graph, and here a connected graph is nothing but all the edges of the graph will be getting connected, right? So all the edges should be connected. So let me just draw it over here. So all the vertices should be connected, but not necessarily each and every vertices should be connected, right? So here I can say this is a connected graph, right? So all the vertices that is available in the graph is getting at least one connection, so it is not mandatory that it should be a cyclic one, right? So that is a different case. But connected graph represents each and every vertex that is available in the graph should be a connected one, right? So it should not form any island. So to say it simply, it is like there should not be any island formation in any graph, right? So that is how we used to say it is a connected graph. And when it comes with disconnected graph, right? So disconnected graph is nothing but, for example, now assume that we have a graph in this way, and where we have three particular vertex is getting connected, and one vertex is not at all connected with any of the graphs. So this is called as a disconnected graph, right? So we have 4 vertices, so v1, v2, v3 and v4, but only 3 particular vertex is getting connected, but one vertex is left out without getting connection with any of the vertex. So this is considered as a disconnected graph. So now we also have something as weighted graph and unweighted graph. Weighted and unweighted, right? So what exactly is a weighted graph and unweighted graph? So for example, let's assume that we have a graph with exactly 4 vertices, right? So let's construct a graph with 4 vertices. So v1, v2, v3 and v4, right? So let's assume in this way. So now let me write some values over the edges. So for example, let it be 2, 4, 6, 8. So here the number 2, 4, 6 and 8 represents, it is actually a weight given for the edge. For example, I can say the edge between v1 and v2 has a value or has a weight of 2, right? So same way v1 and v4 has a weight of 8. So v4 and v3 have a weight of 6, and here it is going to be 4, right? So this is a weighted graph. And when it comes with the unweighted graph, again you can consider the same example where none of the edges, right? So none of the edges have any weight mentioned there, right? So this is the main difference between a weighted graph and unweighted graph. So followed by this, we have something called as a regular graph. So we have an example of a regular graph, right? So what exactly is a regular graph? So a regular graph is nothing but, so if I construct any graph, so here the vertices, or you can say the degree of all vertices or edges is same way if it is a square shape, right? So if it is a square or rectangle, here it will be around 90 degree, right? So in that case, this is called as a regular graph. And at last, it is going to be a cyclic graph. So cyclic or acyclic graph. So cyclic graph or acyclic graph. So cyclic graph means all the vertices, right? So all the vertices should be connected and it should form a cycle. And acyclic means I can have these 3 vertex connected in this format, right? So here it is not joined together to form a cycle, but in this case it is called as a cyclic graph. Same way we can also construct say a square shape format as a cyclic graph, and when I have something like this is considered as acyclic graph, right? So that's all the difference about types of graphs. So let's just revise this once and then we'll quickly move with an algorithm, right? So first thing is about what is a graph, right? So graph is nothing but it is a nonlinear data structure, and some real-time examples are nothing but Google Maps, Google search engine, and cluster analysis, handwriting recognition. Even you can say a lot of examples where you are going to use something like a portrait photograph or portrait video or whatever it can be, right? So next, graph is nothing but connected vertices by using an edge, right? So each and every vertex V will be connected with some edges with other vertices by using an edge E, right? So here this is a pure example for a graph, and now let's see some types of graphs. So the first type which we have seen here is a null graph. So null graph is nothing but we'll have n number of vertices, but all those vertices will be connected will not be connected with any other edges, right? So when it comes with a trivial graph, we'll be having only one particular vertex, so that is exactly called as a trivial graph, and also there should not be any self loop. And directed graph and undirected graph is nothing but if an edge has a particular direction, it means that it is a directed graph, and if it doesn't have any direction in the, similar to this, it is called as undirected graph. And simple graph is nothing but a graph which doesn't have any self loop, and a graph with self loop will look something like this, right? So if it has a self loop, it will look something like this, and a graph which doesn't have any self loop will look like this, and this is called as a simple graph also. And this is about connected graph. So a connected graph is nothing but all the vertex of a graph should be connected, but not mandatorily to have a cycle, right? So followed by which we also have a disconnected graph, so where one vertex will not be connected with any other vertex in the same graph. And followed by which we also learnt about weighted graph and unweighted graph. So a weighted graph is nothing but if a graph has a particular weight, right? So if a graph has a weight, it means that it is considered to be a weighted graph, where the weight will be given for the edge that connects two vertex. And when it comes with non-weighted graph, it won't have any weight mentioned in any of the edges. And similar to this, we also learned about cyclic graph and acyclic graph, where in cyclic graph it will connect all the edges and it will be in a looping format, and in acyclic graph it won't have any cycle, right? So that's all the difference between cyclic and acyclic. And when it comes with regular graph, each and every vertex will have same degree, right? So that's considered to be a regular graph. Still we have some more types of graphs, like bipartite graph is there, strongly connected graph, weakly connected graph. There are too many types of graph. So as of now, for the basic, this one is sufficient for us to know, right? So now let's start writing some more things about an algorithm, or let's learn something about BFS, DFS, and so on. So now let's discuss about traversal techniques that is available in a graph. So in a graph, we have exactly two types of traversal techniques. So first type of technique is going to be BFS, and another one is called as DFS. So BFS and DFS, where BFS is nothing but breadth first search, and DFS is nothing but depth first search. Here BFS is also called with an alternative name. So for example, here DFS is also called as level order traversal technique. So it is called as level order traversal technique, but for DFS we don't have any other names to be considered, right? So next thing is, in BFS actually we'll follow something like a queue algorithm or a queue format for storing and retrieving all the data, but when it comes with DFS we'll be hardly following stack, right? So for BFS we are going to follow the queue procedure, and when it comes with DFS we are hardly going to follow stack procedure, right? So next, when it comes with both BFS and DFS, the time complexity of both is going to be almost the same one. So for example, big O of V plus E. So the time complexity for both BFS and DFS is almost the same one, that is big O of V plus E, where V represents total number of vertex and E represents total number of edges. So this is all about the basics of BFS and DFS. Still there are few more differences which we can speak about this DFS and BFS. So let me write all those differences over here, right? So the very first difference which we can say about both is nothing but here it's considered to be a breadth first search, so that is BFS, and let me write DFS over here. And BFS expansion is nothing but breadth first search, right? So as usual you know that. So here it is depth first search, followed by which here it uses queue, and here it uses stack for its implementations, followed by which I can also say something like here it is best suit, so it is best to be used when target is too close, right? So if the target is closer, then I can go with the BFS. if the target is far away, right? So then I can prefer DFS to be used, right? So if target is far away, then I can use DFS technique, where it is going to be an efficient one. And here it is actually not suitable for a decision tree implementation, so not suitable for decision trees. But when it comes with DFS, it is actually a great suit, so it's suitable, right? And next is all about which is actually faster and which is going to be a slower one. So here BFS is actually slower than DFS, right? So soon after understanding how this is going to perform the entire implementation process, you will understand why the BFS algorithm is actually slower than your DFS algorithm, right? So it is actually faster, right? So fastest one is DFS and the slowest process is BFS. So followed by which at last we need to speak only about the time complexity. So already we have spoken about the same in the previous one, like it is going to be big O of V plus E. So for both it is going to be big O of V plus E. So time complexity ranges to be the same one, but still when it comes with best case as well as worst case analysis, it might differ, but mostly, right? So mostly it returns the same time complexity, right? So that's all about BFS as well as DFS. So let's go through once again. So BFS is nothing but it is called as a breadth first search, and DFS is called as depth first search. And BFS follows queue algorithm for its backend implementation, whereas DFS follows stack algorithm. And here it is best used when the target is actually closer to that one, and here it is actually used when the target is far away, and here it is not suitable for decision trees. And when it comes with DFS, it is actually suitable for implementation of a decision tree, and here it is slower than DFS, and this is actually fastest one, and time complexity remains constant for both this one, right? So and now let's discuss something about the real-time applications where we are going to use BFS and DFS, right? So if we learn something, we need to know where we are going to apply those logics. So for example, let me write the applications of DFS over here, right? So applications of DFS, right? So the very first application of DFS includes detecting cycle formation. So this cycle formation, I can say something like identifying a mutual friends in Facebook or some other social media platform. So only if I have any mutual friend with a person who he doesn't know or who are not there in my friend list, then I can add them into my friend list. So it means that at first we need at least one person to be in mutual between both, right? So only if we have that privacy settings switched on. So next is finding the path, or even you might say it as path finding algorithm. So for path finding algorithm, mostly we will prefer DFS since it is mostly an efficient way. And to find the topological sorting, so for topological sort we are actually using this DFS algorithm. So topological sort is nothing but CPU's job scheduling, so those process is actually considered to be a topological sorting. And puzzle problems like maze and so on, it's so puzzle problems similar to maze etc, we'll be using this DFS technique. And followed by which we are going to find a given graph is bipartite. It's a given graph is bipartite. So this is all about the applications, right? So real-time applications of DFS. So applications of DFS, so detecting cycle, path finding, topological sort, puzzle maze, it's so maze kind of puzzles, and at last to find whether a given graph is bipartite or not. So this is all about the applications of DFS. Now let's quickly move with applications of BFS, right? So a few applications are there for BFS. So the very first application we have to speak about is if I have a minimum spanning tree without weights, right? So to find the minimum spanning cast for a tree which doesn't have any weight. And next is about peer-to-peer connection or peer-to-peer network connections. So peer-to-peer network connection, for example, it can be any of your torrent site. So in torrent site, hope you might have seen that seeding process and how it actually receives all those values or the data from that particular torrent site and so on. So here for peer-to-peer network connections, actually they use an algorithm which is actually implemented by using BFS technique. So next is about search engine. So for most of the search engines, they have actually used this BFS technique, right? So search engine is actually implemented by using BFS, and social media networks too, right? So social media networks, if I want to share a post only with my friends and friends of friends, right? So we have some options in that way, so where it can also be given or it can be implemented by using that BFS algorithm. And last but not least, for global positioning system, right? So this is one more good example that has been implemented by using the BFS algorithm, right? So now let's try to understand how the BFS as well as the DFS logic is going to work. So first case is, so we have a number one, so we have a graph over here. So I have exactly 7 vertices here, right? So 1 2 3 4 5 6 and 7, and it is connected by some edges over here. So now what I'm going to use is, I'm going to take a starting node as equal to 1, right? So starting vertex can be considered as any one thing from the graph. So here for this BFS, I'm going to assume my starting vertex is going to be 1, right? So same way for DFS also. So first let's complete the backtracking of BFS, then we'll hardly move with DFS technique. So first, if I consider I'm starting with 1, so it means first inside my queue, right? So I'll be having a queue. So you will implement a queue with exactly 7 boxes. So since I have 7 vertices, I need to visit all the vertices, right? So first starting from 1, right? So I'll push the value 1 into my queue, followed by which I'll check with all the vertex that is connected with 1. So I have the vertex 2, so I'll be pushing 2 inside my queue, followed by which we have 4 as well as 5 that is connected with 1, right? So I'll be pushing 4 as well as 5. So see here, so with 1 I have 3 vertex connected, so those 3 are 5, 4 and 2. So I can take this in any order. So I have written it as 2, 4 and 5. So 1 is now done. So followed by which I'll be going with the element 2, right? So from 2 I'll just check what are all the values I have after 2. So after 2 we have the element 7, 6 and 3 connected here. So I'm going to write this as 3, 6 and 7, right? So now in this graph, so after 2 I'll be moving with 4, but 4 is hardly connected only with 1, and 1 is already visited here, right? So 1 is already visited, so I don't want to consider 1 again in this graph. So next number is going to be 5, so we have done with 4. Now if we go with 5, again 1 is considered here, and same vertex should not be visited twice, right? So that is the condition over here. So a one vertex can be visited only once in the entire algorithm, right? So when it comes with DFS, it is a quite bit different one, but in case of a BFS, it is going to be entirely a different case. So now, so 5 will be used. After that I'll move with 3. So 3 is hardly connected with 2 and not more than anything else. So 2 is already visited, so we have done with 3. Same condition for 6 as well as 7 also. So apart from this, if I have any one node connected here, let it be 8. So in that case, after 7 you can directly include 8, right? So this is how the algorithm actually works, right? So this is all about BFS technique. Now let's discuss about how to do everything in a DFS. So DFS, we know that it is going to follow a stack algorithm, right? So it is going to follow the stack procedure. So let's first create 8 memory blocks for this. So it has exactly 8 memory blocks. So first I'll start with the number 1. So first I'm going to start with the number 1. So I'll be pushing number 1 into my stack, followed by which I'll be moving to any one of the number after this one, right? So I'll try to move with other numbers after 1. So I'll start with 2, right? So I'm going to reach 2 now. So after 2 I can take either 7 or 8, or else I can go with, so even I can visit 6, or else I can also go from 2 till 3, right? So whatever nodes I want I can visit. So here already we have visited the nodes 1 and 2, right? So from 2 now I'm going to prefer the number 3, right? So I'm going to prefer the number 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push the number 3. So since it is a dead end, right? So from 3 actually it is a dead end. So after this, what will happen is it will backtrack to 2, right? So it will just backtrack to 2, and from 2 it will check for the remaining path. So from 2 I have a path 6, so I'll try to push 6 into the stack, followed by which I'll check is there any other node available after 6. There is no such nodes available here. So again you will backtrack to 2 itself. So from 2 I have visited 3 as well as I have visited 6. Now I can either visit 7. So after 7 I can go with 8. So when I reach 8 it is again a dead end, so it will backtrack and come back to 7, and 7 hardly doesn't have any other node, so it will move back to 2 itself. So from 2 again I can't find any other node, so it will move back to 1. So now what I need to do is I have to push 7 as well as 8. So we'll be pushing 7 as well as 8 into our stack, followed by which I'll be backtracking from 8 to 7, and from 7 it will backtrack to 2. Now from 2 you will backtrack to 1. From 1 I'll go with 4. So I have to implement 4 into my stack. So we have done that, and at last 4 will be now trying to backtrack to 1 itself. So from 1 we are going to backtrack to the next value, right? So from 1 I have the next value, that is 5. So now we are going to push the value 5 into the stack, and that's all about all the implementation, right? So now we have our stack with these many values. So it is going to give us, so if I try with BFS, you are going to remove the elements from 1 by 1 here, and same way in DFS. So this is how your BFS as well as your DFS technique actually works. So now let's have a small revision about how the BFS and DFS technique actually works. So BFS is nothing but it is considered as a breadth first search, and DFS is considered as depth first search, and BFS is also called as a level order traversal, and it follows queue algorithm for storage and retrieval purpose, and here DFS follows stack algorithm. So time complexity is almost same for both BFS as well as DFS technique. So time complexity ranges from O of V plus E, where V is going to be the vertex and E is going to be the edges. So now let's just discuss about a few more points about BFS as well as DFS. So the main difference between BFS and DFS is mentioned here. So here it is breadth first search, here it is depth, here it uses queue, here it uses stack, and next point is best to be used when the target value is actually closer, and here DFS can be used when the target is at far away point, and here it is not suitable for any of the decision trees, but here it's suitable for a decision tree, and it is actually slower than DFS, but DFS is actually the fastest algorithm, right? So time complexity is same. And when it comes with applications of BFS and DFS, so for BFS applications, right, so for BFS it can be used whenever you have a spanning tree without any weight, and peer-to-peer network connections, they are actually implemented by using that BFS algorithm, and for all the search engine, social media platforms, and most importantly your GPS, right? So everything is actually implemented by using a BFS technique. And DFS has really good examples like detecting a cycle existence in a given input, so path finding, and topological sort, where it includes something like CPU job scheduling and so on. So finding a maze kind of problems, will be using this DFS technique, so it will be much more efficient. And at last, to find whether a given graph is a bipartite graph or not. So this is all about your BFS as well as DFS. Now let's also see how we have implemented both BFS and DFS. So now assume that I'll explain with one more example for this. Now let's assume I have a graph like this. So let's assume in this way. So I have number 1, 2, 3 and 4. So we have 4 vertex. So let me write the BFS as well as DFS values over here. So at first we have discussed with one example. So now let me take with a new example over here, so that you will have a better understanding about this. So for BFS, let's assume that we are going to start with the number 1. So after 1, what are all the nodes I have? So I have 2 connected with 1, as well as we have the vertex 4 connected with this. And now I'll after this we also have the node 3 connected with this. So it means that it can be in any order, so but starting value will be 1, and it can be either 2, 3 or 4. It can be 2, 4 and 3, or even it can be 4, 3, 2, and it can be in any order, right? So only thing is the starting node will be same, and remaining nodes will actually take part in the way how we are going to implement our algorithm, right? So now this is all about our BFS, and let's move with DFS technique. So first let's assume my starting point is equivalent to 1 itself. And why do I stop with this BFS technique? Because I have 4 nodes, and all 4 nodes are connected with this 1 itself, so there is no need of tracking this algorithm further. So let's move with DFS. So from 1 I'll just find out the nearest path or any one path from this. So hardly I'll choose from 1, I'll choose 2. So first I'll have 1, then we'll go with 2. So assume that it is given in a stack, right? So after 1 you will have 2, from 2 I'll move with 3, from 3 I can't move with 1, right? So I can't move with 1 since 1 is already given. So from 3 I'll go with 4. So after 4, if I try to find any other value, 4 is actually connected only with 1, and also 1 is already visited. So it means that we have to stop the entire process. So this is how your algorithm actually works. So that's all about BFS and DFS. So now let's quickly see the implementation of BFS and DFS algorithm using C++. So now let's discuss about BFS as well as DFS implementation. So first I have the BFS implementation right here. So let's see how the BFS is going to work. So here I have so in my main function I have mentioned about a name called as graph, right? So graph is nothing but it is a class, right? So it represents a class, and here G of 4 actually represents I am going to create exactly 4 new objects now, right? So you can also say, or you can consider that this graph is going to have 4 vertices, right? So I am going to create a graph with exactly 4 vertices, and it can have any number of edges in that, even it can have a self loop and so on. So those 4 vertices I am going to name it as 0, 1, 2 and 3, right? So we are just going to name all the 4 edges, right? So sorry, all the 4 vertices as 0, 1, 2, 3, and here add edge represents each and every time I'm going to add a path or add an edge between the node 0 and 1. So here you are going to add an edge between 0 to 2, then 1 to 2, 2 to 0, and finally you have 2, 3 and 3, 3 and so on, right? So these are all the edges that you are going to construct in your entire graph. So now let's see how it actually goes with the implementation path. So first thing is we have a class, and now we are just passing out how many nodes or how many vertices I need in my graph, followed by which I am adding all the edge, and here I have created a method called as add edge, and next is I am just trying to print out the final value, and here you are calling the method BFS, and 1 represents the starting node, or you can say the starting vertex, right? So 1 represents the starting vertex, and even I can consider any vertex as a starting point. So even I can consider 2, or else you can consider 1 and so on. So whatever nodes you want, you can consider that. And if I consider 2 as my starting vertex in my graph, and my output goes in this way. So it is going to be 2, 0, 3, and at last it comes back with 1. And let's try with the starting vertex as 1. So let's try with 1, so that let's see what is the final output we are going to receive now. And now it gives 1, 2, 0, and at last it gives us back with 3. So this is how this BFS actually works, and it provides us an output. So hope everyone will be clear with this main method. So now let's go with what it happens in this graph as well as add edge method, and at last we'll come back with BFS, right? So first when I go with add that method, right? So first is whenever I go with this graph method, so it actually comes back here, and this is actually nothing but we are actually using a constructor. So a constructor is being used here, or it will be generated automatically, and here I have used the collections property, or else I have used the STL library functions, and where I have something called as list. So in that list I'll be just entering all those values. So first we are trying to give the vertex value, and all those vertices will be added over here, and followed by which, so according to this 4 vertex will be created, and now I have an edge, right? So we have an edge, and every time we are giving a pushback property, so it actually acts like a queue, or it acts like a list, so that every time it will add that value corresponding to that vertex, right? So here ADJ represents the object that is created for this list, and followed by which this V represents the vertex, and W represents the exact edge we are going to pass it for, right? So this is all about creating the vertex, total vertex, and next is about adding the edge, right? So just one line to add the edge into the graph, so followed by which we have a BFS. So this is the part where we actually have the exact logic for the code, right? So the logic is so simple, like so if you analyze this code in this way, right? So just have a habit of looking the code from a distance part, so that it will look somewhat easier, right? So if I just zoom this off, you might think like it is a bigger code, so how am I going to implement the same, right? So initially you might feel it hard to write the codes, but when you have a practice of writing codes again and again, or if you are habituated with learning these codes every day, or might be maybe 2 or 3 weeks. If you have a complete practice for data structures and algorithms, you can master it soon, right? So now if you see this code, it actually looks too small, right? So first is your main method is over here, and the BFS, right? So BFS technique is over here, and this is all about adding the edge, and this is very small for creating the graph and to insert all the vertex, and this is all about the basic implementation that comes with class graph, right? So now let's have a look at the BFS method alone, so that you will have a clear idea on how this algorithm actually works. And also I need to have a specific array, and here I have created an array, or I have created an object called as visited, and every time a node which is already visited should never be counted for the second time. So that is why I have a particular object, and for this object or you can say it as array, so for the entire array all the values will be by default given as false, right? So if I say that a particular edge, whether if I check if a edge is visited or not, if I say it is false, it means that it is not visited, right? So once a edge is getting visited, I have to modify it as true. Yes, it has been visited, right? So that is the case why initially it is given as false, after which it will be modified as true based on this one, right? So every time a queue is being implemented, right? So it actually follows queue algorithm, right? So BFS actually follows queue data structure to the entire implementation. So here I'll be using something like queue, and the very first element of the queue will be always setting back with true. After that we are just moving it backwards, right? So now I have an iterator, and here what we are actually doing is whenever your queue is not going to be empty, right? So whenever you reach you have some elements into your queue, right? So if I have my queue filled with some values in it, this loop is going to execute till I delete off the last element from our queue, right? So according to BFS, once a particular node is getting visited, it will be printed as the result on our output screen, and then it will be getting removed. So that's the main reason why we have a while loop here. And every time whenever a queue is going to be so whenever one element is going to be getting removed from the queue, right? So I'll be just finding queue of friend. After that I'll be printing the value, and I'll give queue dot pop friends, right? So here what we are actually doing is we are trying to find the first element, and after that I'm just deleting off the first element once it is getting displayed. So then we have a for loop, then again and again we are just marking it as true and false and so on, and just we are trying to traverse through the entire graph by using this for loop, and we are going to print out all the values every time, right? So that is how this for loop is going to work. So again, take a paper, take a pen, try to traverse through the entire for loop so that you will have an idea how this algorithm actually works, right? So only thing you need to remember here is this part, right? So this BFS part is the most important thing. Other than that, everything is just the implementation part, right? So here just the implementation actually happens, and other than that there is nothing happening beyond this, right? So make sure you go through this BFS method alone so that you will have a clear idea on how this algorithm actually works. So just 25 lines, so from line number 25 till 50, right? So also the code has been attached in the GitHub, and the link is actually given in the description box. So please do go with that link, download this file and backtrack by yourself. So that's all about your BFS technique. Now let's quickly move with DFS. So DFS is quite a bit similar to the same BFS. So everything is almost the same one. Like so let it be the first implementation of graph, and adding the vertex and adding the edge. Almost everything is same one. But here we very well know that it is the most effective one, right? So it is most effective comparing with the BFS, and also lines of code will be less here. So if you see the BFS algorithm, we actually have 65 lines of code, but when it comes with DFS we have only 58 lines, right? So it means that the code is going to be simple one, and here we are actually going to use the stack procedure, right? So we are going to use the stack procedure, and as usual we have that list and everything else, and we are going to implement the entire value into that, followed by which I have a graph, and here this is the part where we are going to push all the values or all the vertex into it, followed by which this particular method is used for adding all the edges into my graph. And this is nothing but here I have a particular method called as DFS util, and what I am going to check is if it is visited, then I have to modify it as true. Right? So every time through that visited array I have to modify it as true, then I have to print the value, then again you will go with a for loop. Right? So again let's take a pen and paper and try to work on this. So this is how the algorithm actually works, right? So nobody actually does the entire stuff on explaining you how this algorithm actually works. So only thing is we can actually try to implement by ourselves, and taking a pen and paper will give you a clear idea, right? So no one can entirely teach you these kinds of algorithm when it comes with advanced level. So make sure you do learn by yourself, right? So and next thing is, when it comes with DFS method over here, I have created an object called as visited, and it is in the format of an array, and by default everything is given as false. Then I'll be just passing off the methods, like I'll be getting my v, that is vertex, as well as the visited. So by default the entire set of object will be passed, and also the vertex. And when I come back here, the very first vertex will be considered and it will be modified as true, and I am going to print the first value, and then we are going to set with an iterator. And based on this is going to completely work with, and it acts like a recursion again and again. So this acts like a recursion, and at last we are going to give back all the values and stop with the program execution. So here, so the same way which we have implemented for the BFS algorithm, so the same kind of inputs were fed here, and now if I try to execute the same, you can see the output is 2, 0, 1 and 3. So similar to this, let's try once here and check with 2. So I got 2, 0, 1 and 3 over there. So let's try check what output we are getting here. So here we are getting 2, 0, 3 and 1. So there we got 2, 0, 1, and at last it is supposed to be 3. So this is how BFS as well as DFS works, and entire set of input is already the same one, right? So I have given the graph with 4, same way BFS is also given with 4, and the edges is also the same one, right? So there is no such difference in edges of BFS and DFS. Everything is almost same. Even I have mentioned with the starting point also. So both works in their own way, and it provides us the output. So only thing you have to remember here is these two parts, right? So from line number 26 till 44, so just around 20 lines of code. So if you do remember this, then it's going to be very easy for you to write any algorithm that is based on BFS as well as DFS. And now let's learn something about a spanning tree. So a spanning tree is nothing but it is also a type of graph, but there are few constraints for a spanning tree. So for example, it should be always an undirected graph. So let's assume that we have 4 vertices here, so v1, v2, v3 and v4. So let's assume in this way, and it has a weight as 5, 10, 6, 4, 3. Let's assume in this way, right? So it is a spanning tree, and we have 4 vertices here, right? So we have 4 vertices, and exactly we have 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 edges, right? So we have 4 vertices and 5 edges in this graph, and this is nothing but it is an example for spanning tree, right? So a spanning tree is nothing but it is a combination of an undirected graph G, where it holds V vertices and E edges, right? So in this case I can say something like there are 4 vertices v1, v2, v3 and v4. When it comes with E edge, I have to say about all possible edges in this graph. So for example, I have an edge between v1, v2 is one edge, okay? So v1, v2, v1, v4, so is the second edge, and now v1, v3 can be the third edge. So v3, v4, right? So v3, v4, and at last it can be v2, v4. So these are all the available edges in this graph. So we have exactly 5 edges that is mentioned here. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, right? So already we have marked here as 5 edges are there. So this is all about a spanning tree. And if I try to cover up, so spanning tree is nothing but all the vertex should be covered, right? So now assume that you have to visit all the end cities, right? So we have a lot of problems like traveling salesman problem, we have Prim's algorithm, Kruskal algorithm, Dijkstra's algorithm and so many algorithms. But Now my problem is I need to connect, or I need to visit all the end cities available here, right? So we have exactly 4 vertices, v1, v2, v3 and v4. I have to visit all the vertices. So according to spanning tree, what will happen is, first from v1, let us assume I'm going to v3, right? So from v1 I'll be going to v3, followed by which I'll be choosing v3, right? So now I'm in v3, so from v3 I'll go with v4, so v3 to v4. After that I'll be going from v4 to v2, right? So we'll be going from v4 to v2. And now see here, we have actually received 3 edges, right? So when we receive vertices minus 1 number of edges, so whenever we receive vertices minus 1 number of edges, we have to stop finding the ways. For example, here we have exactly 4 vertices, so 4 minus 1, it gives us 3 edges, right? So did we receive 3 edges? So 1, 2 and 3. Yeah, we have received 3 edges. So we have to stop iterating through the spanning tree. So let's try to mark the values for each and every edge. So first edge, that is v1, v3, has an edge value of 5. Same way v3 and v4, right? So next is v3, v4, which has an edge of 10, followed by which I have something like v4 to v2. So v4 to v2 has an edge of 6. So totally, if I try to add all the values like 10, 5 and 6, it is going to give me the final output as 21, right? So the spanning cost, right? So for cost estimation, it gives us 21, but this is not actually an optimal solution, right? So spanning tree won't be actually an optimized one, but if it is a minimum spanning tree, right? So if this is a minimum spanning tree, then I can actually try to optimize this. For example, in this entire graph, right? So in this entire graph, if I try to find out what is going to be the least possible value, in that case I can say that the number 3 is going to be the minimum value which I can pick from this. So 3 takes place the number 1, and then it can be possibly 4, and then it will be 5, right? So then it is going to be 6, and at last it is going to be 10, right? So now I have just given the ranking for all the weights that is given here. So first is I need to find out the most least value which I can prefer here. So it is going to be the edge which has a weight as 3. So it means that I will be choosing out the weight as v1 till v4. So v1 till v4, it gives us a value as 3. Same way, now the second possible solution can be v1 and v2, right? So v1 and v2 takes the least amount now. So from v1 I can connect v2, and the edge value is going to be 4, right? So the edge value is going to be 4, followed by which I need to go with the next value, and that is going to be the last one, that is nothing but v1 till v3, and the value is going to be 5, right? So now I said you earlier that v minus 1 number of edges should be there, right? So at once I receive v minus 1 number of edge, I should stop the loop. So here I have received 3 edges, right? So I have 4 vertices in this graph, and I have received 3 edges. So try to add the value. So 4 plus 3, 7, 7 plus 5, it gives us 12. So in the previous case, we received a final answer as 21, but here the cost is just 12. So if you try to find what is the minimum value between 12 and 21, it is definitely going to be 12. It means that this is going to be the minimum value that we can consider for a tree. So for doing this, we have a lot of algorithms. Say for example, we have an algorithm called as Prim's, Kruskal's algorithm, and also we have something like Dijkstra's algorithm. But the most efficient algorithm in all the 3 is Kruskal's. So the Kruskal's algorithm is the most efficient algorithm. So first I have decided to teach you with the entire logic of Kruskal algorithm, as well as to teach you with the implementation part of the Kruskal's algorithm, right? So let's quickly move with how a Kruskal algorithm can be implemented and what are all the rules we have to give for a Kruskal's algorithm. So now let's start with Kruskal's algorithm. So in Kruskal's algorithm, we actually need to know about the basics of Kruskal's algorithm and then the remaining part of the same algorithm, right? So first thing is about, so Kruskal's algorithm is nothing but it will actually visit all the vertices. So it will visit all the vertices. So that is one good advantage of using a Kruskal's algorithm. So followed by which I can say something like each vertex is visited only once, right? So here all the nodes will be visited exactly only one time in the entire process. So third thing is it will always provide us the minimum cost, right? So hope you know what is the term minimum. So a spanning tree is nothing but we have to visit all the vertex, but it won't give us a promise or guarantee that it will be always at a minimum cost. But the usage of MST, that is minimum spanning tree, is nothing but it always guarantees that it will give us the least possible cost for traversing through a particular path. So that is exactly the advantage of using a minimum spanning tree, and we have many algorithms under minimum spanning tree. And Kruskal algorithm, right? So Kruskal algorithm is the most efficient algorithm here. And next is it actually gives us the minimum cost required for finding the path. And next is it actually follows something called as greedy technique, or you can also say it as greedy approach, right? So it follows greedy approach, and the most important thing is it doesn't follow cycle formation, right? So it doesn't allow, or it doesn't follow cycle formation. So that's the most important thing we need to note about a Kruskal algorithm. It means that if it forms a cycle, it means that same node will be visited for the second time, right? So that's why the algorithm itself is implemented in a way that it doesn't form any cycle at any cost. So next thing is we need to know about the time complexity. So time complexity for this entire graph is going to be O of V plus E into log of V, right? So total number of vertex plus total number of edges into log of V. So this is going to be the total time complexity for the entire graph. So it is somewhat near to n log n, right? So it is closer to n log n, but still it is lesser than n square, right? So it is not more than n square, it is still lesser than n square. So that is why we are preferring Kruskal's algorithm, right? So now let's start implementing the Kruskal's algorithm. So before that, let's now construct a small graph over here, right? So let me just draw a graph. So let's assume that we have a graph with around 4 vertices, right? So let's assume in this way, and also let's assume that the graph is completely a connected one, like each and every vertex is connected with other vertex, like V1, V2, V3, V4. Right, so we have 4 edges now, like 4 vertices. So V1, V2, V3 and V4. So let's give the weight for this. So 3, 4, 6, 5, 3, 5. So let's assume in this way. So it has a weight, it has a weighted undirected graph, right? So also let us mark here. So it should also be equivalent to an undirected graph always, right? So it should be undirected graph. So undirected weighted graph, right? So it should be always an undirected weighted graph. So that is one important thing which we need to note about a Kruskal's algorithm. So Kruskal's algorithm is nothing but it will visit all the vertices, and each vertex is visited only once, and it will always give us the minimum cost required for traversing through all the edges or all the vertex present in the graph. And it follows greedy approach, and it doesn't follow a it doesn't allow any cyclic formation in the entire graph, and it should be always an undirected weighted graph. And time complexity is somewhat near to V plus E into log V. So this is what the time complexity for a Kruskal's algorithm. And now let's start writing a code for this. So first rule, right? So we actually need to follow 3 steps for making this one to be a minimum spanning tree. So first step is it should have weights and undirected, right? So it should be always a weighted graph, and also it should be undirected weighted graph, right? So that's the first rule. And next thing is it should be always it will be sorted in some formation. For example, now let me say something like, so after collecting all the edges, so we have to sort in ascending order for edges according to their weights. So this is what the first thing which we need to remember here. So it should always have a weight and it should be an undirected graph. So it should have a weight and it should be undirected, and also it should be sorted in ascending order for the edges. So based on their edges weight, so based on the weight of the edges, it should be always sorted in ascending order. And the second one is it should never form a cycle, right? So it should be considered only when it doesn't form a cycle. So each and every edge can be considered, or instead of it I can say edge should be considered only when it doesn't form a cycle, right? So this is one more important thing which we need to note. And the last point is so simple, like continue step 2, right? So continue step 2 till we reach v minus 1 edges, right? So we have to continue the step 2 till we reach v minus 1 edges. So I hope already you remember this v minus 1 number of edges should be there, right? So first, considering in this entire graph, I need to plot this according to their weight. So if I try to consider the minimum weight, it is going to be 3, right? So also 3 is repeated twice in this. So let's write both the 3 at first, right? So first one is going to be, right? So or else let me just use a next paper over here. So just analyze this one and let me write the entire value nearby itself, right? So first value will be v1 v2 and edge is going to be 3, right? So v1 v2 it is going to be 3, and next one is v4 v3, right? So let's write v4 v3, again edge is 3. So it means that this 3 and this 3 is done now. So next case is it is going to be 4. So when I consider 4, so v2 v4 can be considered, right? So v2 v4 can be considered and the weight is going to be 4. So followed by this we have 2 5s. So let's just write it as v2 v3 which gives 5, and also v1 v4 gives 5. So v1 v4 also gives 5. So followed by this I should say the last one, that is v1 v3 which gives 6, right? So now I guess you can understand the logic entirely, like v1 v2, right? So we have just done with the first case. So it should have weights and undirected. Yes, the condition is satisfied. So sort in ascending order for edges according to their weight, right? So edges are sorted according to their weights in ascending order, right? So and second step is it should be considered only when it doesn't form a cycle, right? So only if it doesn't form a cycle I should consider an edge, and continue step 2 till we reach v minus 1 edges. So it means that I have exactly 1 2 3 and 4. So 4 edges are there. So 4 minus 1, I need 3 edges at last, right? So I should give tick mark only for 3 edges over here. So let's try to analyze what are all the 3 edges I can consider. So first is v1 v2. So let's try to shade this one. So first is v1 v2 is connected, so let's give a tick mark. So v4 and v3, right? So next is v4 and v3. So I can also connect v4 and v3. So let's give a tick mark for this. And v2 v4, right? So v2 and v4. So now I want to check if I connect v2 and v4, is it forming any cycle? No, right? So I can then connect v2 and v4, and now I'll be checking with this condition, that is total number of edges I have received is equivalent to 3, right? So 1 2 and 3. So it means that remaining edges won't be considered now, right? So all the remaining edges are not considered now. And finally your graph looks something like this. So from v1 I'll be traversing through v2, and from v2 I'll be traversing to v4. From v4 I'm going with v3. So mark the edges here. So from v1 we are going to v2 according to this. So from v2 we are coming back to v4. So we have drawn that. From v4 we are moving with v3. So the weights are 3 4 and 3. So final output is equivalent to 10. So this is the minimum cost we can find for this entire minimum spanning tree, or you can say it as for the entire graph, right? So this is how we have to calculate the minimum spanning cost for a given graph, right? So hope you will be clear about this. And now come, let's quickly move with the implementation part for the same algorithm. So now let's discuss about the implementation of Kruskal's algorithm. So already we have discussed about the logic about how a Kruskal's algorithm is going to work. So it always takes, it always arranges, right? So it arranges the entire weight according to a non-decreasing form, and after arranging everything in ascending order, it will go with each and every path and it will try to mark out the edges. So once we receive total number of vertices minus one number of edges, we'll stop the execution of our entire code, and finally we'll try to add all the possible weights, and we'll display the final output as that is going to be the total cost. So here let me first compile and show you what is going to be the output for this program. So already I have given all the input in a static way. So see here, we have the output as, so 2, 3, that is actually taken at the first part, and the weight is considered to be 4, followed by which 0 and 3, the path is selected here, so the weight is going to be 5, and 0 to 1, here the cost is going to be 10, right? So altogether if I add all the costs, it gives me a minimum spanning tree cost of equivalent to 19, right? So here if you see this closely, we have exactly 3 nodes. So that is 4 nodes, 0, 1, 2 and 3. So it means that in this entire graph I have exactly 4 vertices, and see here we got exactly 4 minus 1, that is 3 number of edges here. It means that each and every node or every vertex in the graph is getting visited, and at last we got our final output. So now let's try to construct how the graph is going to look like. So here let's assume that I have the number 0, then we have the number 1, also we have the number 2, and we have the number 3, right? So let's assume in this way. So we have 4 numbers, right? So we have 4 vertices in our graph. So let's assume that first here it is mentioned as, so source node is 0, right? So graph of h0 dot source, right? So source is equivalent to 0 and destination is going to be 1, right? So source is 0 and destination is going to be 1. And next is they have mentioned the weight as 10. So it means that let's mark the weight in this way. So now from 0 I'm traversing to 1, and here the weight given here is equivalent to 10. So now in the next line we have source is equal to 0 and destination is now going to be 2. So it means that from this source I'm going to travel to the destination, that's 2, right? So next let me just show it off over here. So the weight is going to be 6. Right. So now we have marked the values over here, and followed by which we have the source as 0, and now the destination is going to be 3. So from 0 I have to mark a destination to 3. So let's do something like a slash. So let's assume in this way. So I have given the values, right? So now let's assume from 0 to 3 it is mentioned as the weight is equivalent to 5. So from 0 we are going to reach to the value 3, that is the destination node, and here the weight is mentioned as 5. So followed by which next part I have the source as 1 and destination is 3. So from 1 I have to traverse till 3, right? So let me just do this one. And here the weight is mentioned as 15, right? So weight is mentioned as 15. So let's just plot the points first, and now let's assume that from 1 we are just traveling to 3, right? So 1 is the source node and the destination node is going to be 3, and in between we have the weight as 15 for this particular edge, and at last we have 2, 3 and 4, right? So where 2 is nothing but the source node and destination node is going to be 3, and at last the weight is going to be 4 again, right? So that is what it has been mentioned over here. So that's all about this graph. So if I consider this, so the minimum weight which I can take from this entire graph is going to be 4, right? So the minimum weight which we can consider here is 4. After 4 the minimum weight is 5, and after 5 the minimum weight is going to be 6. It means that I just need only 3 edges to be utilized here, and also I need to be very careful in not forming a cycle. But the problem here is if I consider 4, 5 and 6, right? So if I consider the very first three values, it means that it forms a cycle. Also, it is not visiting all the nodes in the graph. So our condition is we have to visit all the vertex that is given in the graph, and here I can consider 4 because it is the least value which connects 2 and 3. So I have done with 2 vertex, and next part is I can cover 0 from 3, so that I can say the cast is going to be the minimum one. So 4 and 5, that weights can be considered, followed by which I need to visit or I need to travel to that particular vertex 1, but the condition is the cast should be again a minimum one. So if I consider 15, it is going to be a maximum one, but from 0 to 1 it is going to be the shortest path. So it means that we can consider our first path as 2, 3, and second path can be from 3 to 0, and third path can be 0 till 1. So this is how the algorithm works, and it provides us a final output. So similar to this, if I just change this value to be so we have given it as 10, right? So instead of 10, if I give this as 100, now let's see what happens for our algorithm, right? So now see here, it is not showing the 100 as a path, but instead it is showing 4 and 5 as such, right? So same as the previous code, it shows 4 and 5, but here the path is now chosen as 15 because the weight between 0 and 1 has been changed to 100, right? So we have modified this as 100. So if I compare the paths between 0 to 1 and 3 to 1, right? So anyhow I need to cover up all the vertex here, right? So I need to cover all the vertex. Already 0, 2 and 3 is getting connected, right? So 0, 2 and 3 got a connected one, but now the only vertex left out is 1. So either I can draw a path from 0 to 1 or 3 to 1, but always the path should be in a lesser value. So we are going to consider 15 as a final case. So same way, if I just try to increase this to 0, then in that case 150 is greater than 100. So again we are going to consider 100 itself. So if I just reconstruct this, see, the cast is now considered to be 100. So it means that every time it shows us the minimum value. Similar to this, if I just try to modify the value of 4 to 40, right? So in that case again it will consider only the less value, right? So let's try to compile this and see, from 0 itself we are getting all the vertex, like from 0 to 3 I get 5, 0 to 2 and 0 to 1, because so the path 2 to 3 has been now modified to 40 instead of 4. Right? So this path has been modified to 40, and if I consider 0 to 2, right? So in that path the value is 6, but this will be 40. So comparing 6 and 40, 6 is the minimum value, so we are going to choose 6 itself. So this is how the algorithm entirely works. So now let's see how this algorithm actually got implemented and how it works, right? So inside the main function I have given the total number of vertex I need, and here it represents the total number of edges I have, right? So no matter whatever edge you have, you can also try increasing the total number of edges to be 6, or even you can have even one edge, or even you can make the graph to be a simple one, right? So followed by which I have created a class. So the class name is going to be graph, and for this graph we have created a node, right? So not such node, we can say we have created an object, and we are actually calling a method. So we are calling a method called as create graph, and we are passing the values, or we are passing the parameters v comma e. So now let us just check where we have that method. Okay, so this is the part where we have that graph as well as create graph method. So here what happens is, every time a new graph or a new node will be created, followed by which you will be having the vertex name as well as you will have the edges, right? So this is how the graph actually works, and this line actually states that we are creating a node, or we are creating an object for this class graph, and followed by which those values are getting modified, right? So it is same as a linked list which we have seen on the very first day, and here this proves about the edge, right? So and also I have one variable called as total cast, which is equal to 0. That is nothing but I have initialized a variable with 0 by default, and every time a path is getting included, I'll try adding that weight value to this total cast, so that at last I'll display my final output. So now after this we have some class called as subset, and in this subset, this is the path where we are going to find the parent node or the source node, and union is nothing but we are going to match each and everything, and I'm going to increment the value of how many edges I have been collected, right? So that is the main use of this union method. and my computation. So this is nothing but we are going to take out the weight, and just we are going to find which is going to be the maximum weight. It's always the least weight should be returned. So it is actually working in that case. And Kruskal MST, so this is where the part where the entire logic has been implemented. So I'll suggest you to have a paper and a pen to note down the entire code and just see how it actually works. So we also have sorting procedure over here. So whenever the sort procedure is called, so it will try to sort out the entire graph, right? So it will just sort out the entire graph according to which the weights are arranged in an ascending order, right? So that is the case why we are using qsort over here. And again we'll go with subset method, and followed by which we will be going with traversing through each and every wedge, right? So this is how the program logic actually works. And at last I'll just take out the value from this, and I'll try printing off each and every value. Like first we'll take the result value and I'll print the source node, and then I'll print the destination node, followed by which we are going to print their weight. So each and every time I'm just adding total cost along with the weight, right? So every time we are just trying to add total cost along with the weight, so that after the execution of this particular value, right? So after execution of this, what exactly happens is like I'm just trying to print the total cost variable, so which in turn gives me the final output of the minimum spanning tree. So this is how the Kruskal's algorithm works. So please do ensure that once this session is done, just take out the code from the GitHub and try writing the same on a paper, and try to find out how the logic actually works, and try to understand it by yourself, right? So only way how you can understand the entire code is by self-learning, right? So more than what somebody is going to teach you about why do we have a find method, why do we have a union method, so why we have this method and so on, right? So instead of someone telling you how this actually works, you can manually work out by yourself, so that you will clearly understand how this logic actually works. And if you have any doubt, please do post it in the comment section, so that our team will get in touch with you sorting out your doubts.